So Blackbeard at Marineford, and I think a lot of this goes under the radar that I'm going to mention here, because Blackbeard's actually super underrated by a certain section of One Piece fans. So I figured I'd highlight it all in this video. Now, of course, we start things off with Blackbeard's crew making their awesome entrance. You got Lafitte sitting down, Burgess with the arms crossed, Shiryu in the back. They was cold walking up like this. You saw the shadows coming out there, and they knew it was time. Everything hinged on this. So of course, Teach's plan was to take Whitebeard's Devil Fruit. Now, when he first arrives, what you see is that he starts taunting Sengoku, talking about how he doesn't need the Warlord title anymore now. It doesn't mean anything to him. He used them to get into the gates of justice, infiltrate Info Down, amass his crew, and confirms it was all about this, all about taking Whitebeard's fruit. At that point, Blackbeard is feeling himself. He's got his arms crossed, he's laughing, and Whitebeard actually sends a quake at Blackbeard. He then says, "No mercy, hell, well, I expected that." Whitebeard says, "You're the only one I won't call son, Teach. You broke the iron law of my ship. You murdered one of your brothers." Marco starts getting prepared to go help Whitebeard, and Whitebeard says, "Nah, stay out of this, Marco. I will avenge the 4th Division commander, Thatch. You will pay for it with your life, Teach." At that point, Blackbeard uses Black Hole. He starts coating the battlefield in his darkness. He says, "Thatch died, but so did Ace, Pops. I respected and looked up to you more than anybody, but you got old. You couldn't even save one of your men from execution." Talking about Ace, obviously. "I spared his life, but it was a waste." Now, what I find interesting here is that when Black Hole's activated, you clearly see it start overtaking Whitebeard. But Whitebeard goes into the stance to use his Gura. When Blackbeard uses Black Hole, we get this established back when he fights with Ace. It basically pulls you in. It weighs you down with gravity. Feels kind of like you're in quicksand. So everything Whitebeard does in this sequence is whilst being weighed down. You also have to understand that the Devil Fruit notification only happens when Blackbeard touches you, so it's not when the darkness touches Whitebeard. That's why when he does go to use the Gura attack, he could have still used his attack at that point. But Blackbeard's like, "Oh no, I'm not going to let that happen," so he starts pulling him in to grab him, then he makes the physical contact. Whitebeard can't use the fruit anymore. That's how that works. All this was established when he fought with Ace. You can, however, unload attacks prior to getting touched. Ace did this. So Ace, when he was getting pulled in, knew that he's going to lose his Devil Fruit when he gets pulled in. So he used Saint Elmo's Fire as he's getting pulled, so the attack would still land on Blackbeard while he was getting physically touched. So there's ways around this ability. So it's not just end all be all, hey, Blackbeard has the darkness, he's nullifying your fruit. Ace shows you numerous times that you can continue to fight with your Devil Fruit against Blackbeard. When Blackbeard uses Black Hole, he's usually setting up his liberation technique where everything he pulls in, he sends back out. But you don't actually get to see that here, because when he pulled in Whitebeard, taunting, saying you can't use your earthquakes anymore, Whitebeard cut him off immediately and stabbed him with his placenta. Slices right down into him, cutting Blackbeard and sending him flying to the ground. At that moment, you see Blackbeard is writhing in pain. He's panting and says, "That hurts." Whitebeard starts menacingly walking over to him and says, "Overconfidence and carelessness, those are your weaknesses," and grabs him by his face and emits a quake through Blackbeard's skull. This tells you that you can make physical contact with Blackbeard and your Devil Fruit's never nullified. It has to be him making contact with the Black Vortex. Blackbeard starts begging for mercy, saying, "I'm your son. You're not really going to kill me, are you?" Whitebeard just goes through with it, unleashes a massive quake through Blackbeard's brain. Blackbeard's bleeding everywhere. He's screaming, calls Whitebeard a monster and says, "Why won't you die, you old fool?" and then calls out for his crew to jump Whitebeard. Now, this is actually pretty impressive that Blackbeard took that attack, especially in totality with the things to come. Every Blackbeard pirate at this point, this is the infamous page where they all start shooting, jumping, slicing, and Whitebeard just stands there and takes it. They expend all the bullets in their guns, and Whitebeard's still not dead. He drops one of the coldest lines ever. He says to Blackbeard, simply, "You're not him." That man really just no-sold all their attacks, stood there, said Blackbeard's a fraud. He say, "You ain't him, bro. Trust me, you're not him. You're not that guy, pal." Blackbeard's like, "Holy shit, you're still alive. The man Roger was waiting for. It's definitely not you, Teach," says Whitebeard. "Just as there are some who inherited Roger's will, chose Luffy, someone will eventually do the same for Ace. You can sever bloodlines, but their flames will never be extinguished." Foreshadowing for Sabo. At least that's my interpretation. He then says the One Piece does exist. You see reactions from Sengoku, you see Blackbeard laughing, and he says, notably, "Forgive me, my sons, I could not finish off that fool. This is it for me." He didn't have the power to finish Blackbeard at this point, but obviously he's extremely damaged. He's taken multiple heart attacks, got fucked up by Akainu. He immediately rushes over, throws the cloak over Whitebeard, prepares to take the Devil Fruit. Blackbeard then emerges with the Gura. More confident than he's ever been. Didn't take the advice of Whitebeard who said overconfidence is his weakness. Starts a black hole, starts pulling in all these fodder marines. Says this is the power of Miami, and now this is the power of the Gura. Now what makes Blackbeard so savage here is that, like I told you guys, the reason he uses the black hole is so they get stuck in the darkness. They get stuck and they can't dodge. They get weighed down. So that means they just gotta eat that full force fucking Gura. This man is relentless right now, bro. He takes Whitebeard's stance, unleashes a massive quake that splits through the Tower of Marineford. Becoming the first person in recorded One Piece history that we know of so far to be able to wield 2 devil fruits. Blackbeard then says, the gravity of darkness that turns everything to nothingness, and the power of the earthquake that destroys everything. Now I have it all. I am invincible. I am the greatest. Could be swapped with strongest as well. Wouldn't matter because it's just his opinion though. But yes, strongest and greatest essentially mean the same thing in Japanese. I don't know how he did it, but he stole Whitebeard's fruit. Everybody's freaking out. He starts screaming out, look at this. You see that? Tell the world, tell everybody, the Navy, the pirates, it doesn't matter who. The future of the world has been decided. As of today, my era begins. One of the dopest villain monologues ever. Blackbeard got his moment here, bro, for real. And you see Sengoku and Akainu take notice. Now, Akainu taking notice is pertinent to what happens after this arc. It tells you that he understood what Blackbeard did. He had both fruits, understood what they were capable of. Blackbeard then shifts his focus with new intentionality, saying that he can feel the power of the Gura coursing through him. Feels like he can control the whole world in this moment, which kind of speaks to the Gura kind of being just like a straight amplifier for him, which is consistent with what happens anyway. His mission at this point is, of his own volition, to sink Marineford. That's what he wants to do. So just as he starts preparing to do that, Sengoku comes in, and in fairness, yeah, he does off guard him. He lands a huge shockwave on not just Blackbeard, but the entirety of the crew. They take massive amounts of damage from this. This would be a Dur-neg attack. Shockwaves are Dur-negating. They get sent flying. Sengoku then starts screaming out, the fortress can be rebuilt. But the island of Marineford is the hub of our world. For all the citizens of the world who fear the invasions of evildoers, this is an ominous day, but justice and righteousness will never be defeated. Don't you dare speak lightly of sinking this island, you fiend. And Blackbeard says, just try and protect it. Kind of mirroring what was happening with Akainu and Whitebeard, where Whitebeard was intentionally being reckless, and Akainu was speaking on behalf of this sentiment. This is one of the big statements that proves, of course, that the Admirals were all holding back at Marineford. Sengoku's holding back at Marineford because they don't want to destroy the island, they want to destroy the monument. It goes beyond rebuilding the fortress. It's a symbol for the world, symbol for the good standing of the world government, at least in their eyes. They're the heroes of this story in their view. So from that point on, we get confirmation that while Akainu was solo in the Whitebeard Pirates, Blackbeard and Sengoku were fighting. They had a fight. We don't know if the other Blackbeard Pirates were involved. It's the only person Sengoku's fought throughout the entire war, mind you. This is important because after the war, you visibly see that Sengoku has battle wounds and he's fully bandaged up. So we know that off screen, the two of them were putting in pain. Seems to be potentially even in the favor of Blackbeard. But before we get to that, we see that Blackbeard starts tilting the sea around Marineford. Says the power is exhilarating, but I can't control it too well yet. And at that point, you see that Garp shows up. Garp never is confirmed to have been fighting with Blackbeard. Doesn't seem that he ever did fight with Blackbeard. He just stepped up prepared to do so, because we see right after Shanks shows up, Garp and Sengoku are still standing in the same spot. This is the moment where Shanks shows up. So you could even interpret this as Blackbeard was getting the upper hand on Sengoku and Garp was getting prepared to step in to help him. But you could also just look at it the same way, like when they fought Shiki, it's like they're just going to fight together because it makes the most sense. They're going to apprehend the threat, put him down as quick as possible, plus they're best friends. Especially given that Shiki's kind of a similar situation, because Shiki could do a lot of AoE damage to the island, given that he had the float fruit. You saw he destroyed a large part of the fortress, similar to how Blackbeard was planning on doing, and how like Whitebeard and Blackbeard using the Gura kind of do similar things. With that respect, you also could take an interpretation that the damage that Sengoku takes could be him playing defense, because it doesn't seem like Blackbeard does any more substantial damage to the island. He obviously had intention to do so, but it doesn't seem like he succeeded in that. So I could see a scenario where Sengoku, who obviously is limited in the sense of he's obviously trying to preserve the island, therefore he wouldn't want to just keep amplifying the problem with insane shockwaves, because obviously he can send shockwaves out, so he's sending them at the rubble, but there's going to be an extent to the levels he's going to use them. It could be a situation where he played defense, jumped in the way of things, protected the island, which it seems that he did a pretty good job of that. Don't forget that a shockwave and a shockwave can make contact with each other. This is how Blackbeard and Law could actually clash. Like the Gura and Law's K-Room can clash because they're both shockwaves. Otherwise, Law's sword should phase through you, but Blackbeard, that's why he can defend against is because he defends it with the Gura. So theoretically speaking, Sengoku could probably do the same thing with Blackbeard's Gura. He can probably just apprehend it with his own shockwaves. Are the shockwaves of the Buddha fruit comparable to the shockwaves of the Gura? Remains to be seen, probably unlikely. So potentially he could have been at the disadvantage there, and that could be the result of why he had damage. But it's just a thought. But it is a pretty good look for Blackbeard that he gets to face off with both Garp and Sengoku and talks to them with so much confidence. He says, "How do you like that, Buddha, Sengoku, and Hero Garp? You think you can stop me? The era of Whitebeard is over. You're all obsolete now." Interesting dialogue, especially given how strong we know Garp to be later in the story. Sengoku's relative to this Garp. We get that basically confirmed through Roger's statement, and even in the early parts of Marineford, Sengoku alludes to it, basically backs it up when he held him down and everything like that. They're stated to be rivals, and especially given the respect he shows Rayleigh later, but I have a whole analysis video for Amazon Lily and what truly happened there if you're curious about that. So this is probably just bravado from Blackbeard. He really was feeling himself, didn't know the extent. He was kind of in the Lulu world for a second, but it's crazy to think he believed he could take these guys on 2v1, saying no one can stop me. I will destroy everything and swallow everything up. I really like this panel because it has Akainu and Blackbeard, who I view to be the two major villains for Luffy going forward, both wreaking havoc on opposing sides of the island, the two preeminent villains. Then of course when Kobe was jumping in front of, and obviously like I'm saying, there's concurrent events that take place, so like he was facing off with Garp Sengoku. Then, you know, you cut to what Akainu was doing in the same time, and then Kobe jumps in front. He reacts to what Kobe was saying, starts clearly visibly paying attention to that. Then, of course, Shanks shows up. All this and that happened. The fighting stopped. Shanks walked over there, and Blackbeard said he achieved what he wanted, which was getting the Gura. He doesn't want to fight Shanks at the current moment. He passed on the fight. It's not the time yet for me to fight you. So clearly foreshadowing for their fight down the line. Wouldn't necessarily say it's like people say like, oh, that means he's, you know, he's afraid of Shanks. It's more so like what he said. He got what he wanted. He's going to take that victory and leave. He's obviously got battle wounds and damage. He's not going to fight a fresh Shanks at this point. Also, there's no reason to at this juncture. Don't forget, he's already fought Shanks. He's the one that left that scar on Shanks' face. Shanks said specifically he wasn't being careless. He highlighted that not even Mihawk left the scar like that. It's interesting. We got to get more info into what happened. It wasn't when they were kids. It was when Shanks was already established as an adult. Now, it's not current level Shanks or current level Blackbeard, obviously, but it's still important to note that this happened. It does seem that Shanks is more wary of Blackbeard than Blackbeard is of Shanks in the current story. But it is interesting that when faced with Shanks right here, after he was so confident, all that confidence fades. Same thing with Akainu later. When he sees Akainu, after Marineford recovered, he does not want any part of fighting Akainu, even with his full crew. So it's pretty nice to see the way that they portray Akainu and Shanks through Blackbeard. So Blackbeard leaves. That basically wraps that up. He was able to fight seemingly on par with Sengoku, was clearly able to damage him. This is really great scaling for him. This isn't even the Blackbeard we have today. He said he couldn't control the power fully. He's had 2 years to master the fruit. Don't really know the full scope of how strong he's gotten to this point, but we do know that this is pretty good feat, pretty good portrayal, and that's Blackbeard at Marineford. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.